this might not come to a shock to few, but like I think AI is such a hot topic now, like crypto was, like NFTs were, like all of this stuff. I think this is my prediction, in 10 years, like we're gonna be so much more human focused. It is still gonna be like, I would rather read this piece by this person, look at this painting by that person. So my belief is like, yes, it's a player, but I personally don't think about it too much.
I could not agree more and disagree more with Thomas's statements there. I think while he's spot on that some are too overhyping it, they're too deep into AI, I also think he's fundamentally wrong on the impact AI will have on both society and as marketers. I think it's akin to the internet. How marketing was done before the internet is completely different than how marketing is done today with the internet. I think AI is the same thing. I think in 10, 5, however many years, we're going to look back and say marketing was so different when we didn't have AI. So my one recommendation, no matter where you stand on it, is to dive in, learn about it, become knowledgeable about it to a point, so at least you can be dangerous with it, because I believe, and many others believe, AI is here to stay. But thankfully, that's not really all of this podcast. That was one of my questions that I asked during that event that you just saw, which you're probably like, what's going on here? Why is Jordan sharing an event and then talking over it or talking to it? Rather than me explain, I'm going to let Thomas, Tommy, and Eric explain what's going on here, and I'll be back shortly.
Does that thing actually work?
Yeah, it's real.
What we're doing is we're going to do SEO behind the scenes. Kind of what our thought here is just talking a little bit about what makes an SEO strategy successful. I mean, kind of too, like what makes one not successful. And yeah, like we're gonna be talking today. The plan is for like 2.5 hours-ish.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So I'm Eric, one of the owners here at SocialSurge, and specifically, so I have about, I don't even know, over 10 years of experience in SEO now.
Jeez.
Self-taught, actually a finance major, so I think that's why I like the data part of this stuff, but yeah, YouTube is a good friend of mine, and that's how I've learned a lot of the stuff that I have.
I'm obviously Tommy, not Eric. I've been in SEO for about 2.5-ish years now. My background was supply chain. I worked in purchasing. So I think the cool thing between us is he was self-taught and then I was taught by him. But the interesting piece is I'm very fresh still, in my opinion. And he's seen variations of SEO, whether it's Google updates or how people go about things or anything like that. So I think you'll get kind of like a fresh look, and then, no offense, but an older look at what SEO is.
If you don't recognize Tommy or Eric, that's okay, but they both were on the On Marketing podcast. Eric was in the first season, Tommy was in season 2. Huge fans of both SocialSurge and these individuals, which is why I was so thankful and lucky that they allowed me to do this. So I've been to a few SocialSurge events, but I haven't recorded any of them, or I haven't thought of this idea to create content around the event. I'm going to be sharing my commentary on the event as we watch it. Sometimes I'll talk over it, or in this example, I'll be at the end of the clip to just give you an extra thought, a few extra insights, or maybe some things that are going on in my head as this was recorded in July. So before we get deeper into this event, this episode, this unique episode, let's run the intro. Welcome to season 3 of On Marketing, a show where we explore what marketing is, like really is. I won't tell you what to think. I'll help you improve how you think about marketing. It's July 11th, 2024. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. Before we get into the episode, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter to get new episodes, extra insights, and the occasional photo of my cat or me. It's fittingly called a newsletter on marketing. It's sent out every Sunday morning. The link to join is in the first line of the show notes. Finally, opinions shared on this podcast are the individual views of the hosts and guests, and not those of their employers or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. I hate that I have to do that, but it pleases the legal team. Thank you for being here.
So first things up, strategy planning. We'll kind of just talk about like kind of how we handle onboarding in a way, and I think that'll just be like a good conversation just for a lot of the different things that we do. So Tommy, talk to us. Onboarding tasks, day 1, for us it typically takes like, I don't know, onboarding is about 6 weeks-ish. So kind of what happens during that time?
Yeah, so when we onboard a new client for SEO, he's doing the sales piece, and then if it's for SEO, obviously I'm the one that's kind of coming into the picture a little bit more. Right away, we're just talking about, hey, what is the client? What are they looking for? Maybe KPIs that they have. It's like, hey, we need leads now, or we need, we want to just see a growth there. In terms of what I do from an SEO perspective is a lot of competitor research, and obviously client research.
It is so critical to spend the time to invest the dollars up front to truly understand. So this was so I was so surprised that they touched on this, but it was really important, not even so you copy their onboarding process, but more so you understand the importance of asking these questions, understand the objectives, so then your results, your outcomes can be more tied to what they're really trying to do rather than just essentially being a vendor and doing whatever they're asking. This is both for companies, agencies, consultancies like SocialSurge, but it's also important for internal marketing teams. As you get all these different requests, asks, you really need to spend the time to understand it so then you don't waste time later on. Eric's going to get into that as this continues.
If it's, a home inspection company, I'm looking at, okay, what type of homes do they do? Do they only do a certain type? And then I'm looking at competitors, whether it's websites or keywords, traffic if possible, to see, hey, what kind of portion of the market do they have from an SEO perspective? Are they ranking for a ton of keywords or not?
While I think Tommy goes into great depth, I think something important is really understanding even the business model, or as I would like to say, the jobs to be done. Why is this company, why are their product services being hired? What is the job that they're getting done? Because then you're just going to be able to understand, as Tommy was just talking about competitors, maybe for a hotel, it's not just the hotels, but it's other sports bars if you're having food places, restaurants within the hotel, or Airbnbs, or all these other competitors who are being hired for the same job, but they aren't in the same industry or the same category. So I really think that's important on why you need to spend the time in asking these fundamental questions of understanding what's the business model, how do they make money. Now, if this is your own company, it's very different. You hopefully should know this, but just even asking, like, what are the jobs that we're hired for? Whether it's a product you're trying to market, an event, like what would this be hired for? And asking those questions up front to get the understanding to do better marketing. I will say this repeatedly, but I don't know if I've touched a lot on this. Marketing requires fodder. It requires material. So the more material answers to deep questions, thoughtful questions you're asking, the more fodder you have to mix and match to create something in marketing. I deeply believe that marketing is almost impossible to do if you don't have fodder. If you're not giving, in SocialSurge's case, the client, if you're not giving SocialSurge the information, they just won't be able to do great work. I truly believe that, and I think the same is true for internally.
So that's a lot of like the early learning stages that we're doing. I'm just trying to get a grasp. Sometimes we get a client and I have absolutely no clue what the industry is, or terminology that they use is a big piece. So I'm learning, different terms they want to use or don't want to use. Anything that I missed from kind of like the learning piece of onboarding?
No, I think it's a lot of that. And I guess like a common question we get too is just like, why? Like, do we need to do that stuff? So
yeah, I think again, it's just learning. Like you are onboarding a client, even if you know the industry, they might do things differently than, other people that you've learned about in that industry. I think words is a big piece of that, like terminology that they either want to rank for from a SEO perspective or even just stay away from. I know in finance, like some of the financing companies that we've worked with, there's been terms that we've used and they were like, hey, we don't want to use that. And it's kind of a bad look. So I think that's the big reason why in the early stages, like we want to just learn as much as possiple.
Yeah, and I think that's like just so important too, is because it's so important the type of messaging you can get across on a website, or like a lot of the stuff we do isn't even just like, we'll talk about this later, obviously, like the content and like what's put out there. And if we don't do our research in the beginning, like we could do all of this work and have all of these suggestions and then could like get back to the client with it and like, hey, this is completely off. So it saves a lot of time in the long run.
I love that Eric finishes there with it saves us a lot of time. I think that's so true. If I haven't touched on that, if I haven't harped on that, by doing the research, by spending the time up front to understand the business model, jobs to be done, all of it, what they're trying to achieve, you will save time on the back end. You won't have to use revision after revision after revision because you missed the point or you didn't ask the question that should have been asked. Doing the work before the work is so important. Now, another important question is, how do you prioritize the research, or how do you prioritize what to do?
How do we decide on where to prioritize?
I think that's just where, we do all this research, right? And if we just do this research and then don't do anything with it, like obviously that's wasted time. So we're trying to gain something from the research that we've done, and sometimes someone has a website that already has a lot of content, or they have a really well just done like message, I guess, or like brand, or how they're just talking on their website. It really depends on what we discover during that learning stage. And that's like, we have a series of 6 internal meetings, like from our entire onboarding process. Some are, I guess, recaps, but it's a lot, and every time like we're learning something new and bouncing ideas off of each other, and that's like kind of where we end up getting this end goal, or this, this end strategy that we want to talk about with and get approval with the clients.
I love what Eric talks about there. Key piece is learning. Every time you're just learning more, ensuring that you're not allowing the availability bias or just that fact that new information overrides the old. You're kind of taking it all in, and then being able to give better recommendations, or again, as I've said, do better outcomes, do better marketing in the end. Another piece that's important here that I haven't really touched on much is this fact of diagnosis. You wouldn't go to a doctor and have them just jump and start opening you up for heart surgery. That's a horrible example, but still, you get the point. You go in, you share a lot of things, they give you a diagnosis, and then from there, you have coherent actions. A few years ago, I read this book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rummelt, the best book on strategy I've ever read. It's a hard read. Maybe it was just hard for me then, probably still hard for me, but it goes into this fact that almost all strategy that is out there today is mainly tactics. As I said, they're having somebody come into your clinic and you jump right into solving them. Rather than, as Richard argues, you should be doing a diagnosis. You should have an understanding of, why are we creating this plan? Why are we throwing this event? Whatever that may be, so then you can have guardrails and then coherent action. So the diagnosis is something I see skipped over and over and over again, but it's so important to do so then you can make hypotheses, or you can just have more information to do better marketing. In the end, it's up to you to get the info, get the context, get the fodder for the outcome, for better marketing. So if you don't have it, you need to ask the questions. You need to create systems and processes like SocialSurge has done, so you can get that from externally or internally from different departments.
SEO services, what do they include or not include?
There's a lot of different opinions on this, I think, in the industry as a whole, and maybe from an outside perspective looking into, and actually, I'm not making it up, but like today I literally had a conversation with someone that we talked about like what SEO does mean, and to them they're like, okay, like this is what this means, and they were talking about like website design and like all of these things that were technically website design. While that's not SEO, I think a good example would be like sometimes it kind of can be, or it can at least help achieve the results to like what you're actually looking for. If you're looking at SEO, you're trying to get found online, but then there's like a next step that you're looking for them to take too. And if that part isn't done, like if you have a bunch of like the buttons on your website that are saying really wrong things, or like not making it clear what the next step should be, or they're not easy to see, that should be a part of quote unquote SEO. And it's gonna like help really like complete that picture. So it's an interesting thing, because is that like technically SEO? No. But like, is it a part that's gonna make like, your marketing, your website, and everything we're trying to do for you better once we continue to get people there? Like, yes.
Yeah, I think we've ran into this a little bit with some clients, but it's like, we all know, like who's in marketing, like it's all one big thing and it should work together. And there's pieces that you can, pull levers or whatever the case may be. Sometimes when explaining like what we would offer from an SEO perspective, and then 2 months later, we're working on something that we didn't say that was navbar edits is maybe an example. Like there's just so much that you have to, that can play into SEO. If an image isn't loading, like technically that's web design, but people are jumping from the page quickly. That impacts SEO, your rankings.
If you haven't caught what's in the air, that's the reason this podcast exists. What is marketing? How do you define marketing? Because if we're not defining it the same way as Eric's example of SEO being website design, it's going to have just poor outcomes. We're going to be misaligned and it's not going to work. So as much as I can, yes, be semantics, what does the definition matter? You just do it. No, the definition matters, and I love that they touch on this. Like, what is SEO? What is it? What is it not? And sometimes the important part is, what is it not? So then we can better understand what is it. Same for you and your business, your company. Who do you not serve? So then we can better understand who we do serve. So I really love this point, and it just echoes the void and need for people to define things and then keep updating that definition, but align around a definition. So when we say do more marketing, why does our SEO suck? We're all talking about the same thing.
Okay, so now we have done a lot of our research, our planning. We got approval on stuff. Clients incredibly excited. What happens next? Talk about this SEO content planning sheet that we have.
Throw a party. No, so we recently, this was probably this year, I think, is when we started to do this. We went to a conference last year, and somebody spoke on the intention of like what you're creating from a content perspective is extremely important. So what we've recently, I think it was this year, is we built a content planning sheet, and it has the different months of a quarter. Now it has, what we build into it is like, okay, what keywords do we want to work on? Do we want to improve, informational keywords? So people are looking for how to paint my wall or whatever the case may be. And we're putting in the content that we're going to write about for that month with the specific keywords that we're ranking for. One reason I absolutely love this is it gives our whole team insight into what the strategy is and what our intention is for the quarter. It can definitely change throughout the different months. I'd love your perspective on it because I was the one who built it and it's been through many iterations. And I don't know, from your perspective of maybe not dealing with SEO all the time for a lot of clients, like what do you think is the advantage or maybe disadvantage of doing it that way?
I mean, I think a huge advantage is that it makes us sit down, strategically think as a team too, and say, hey, what are the things that we're going to be focusing on, for this quarter and why? And it's making sure then that that's good with the client, and then that client can see hey, this is what we're working on for this quarter, why we're working on this for this quarter, and that other thing that you really want to request or the other thing you want to ask last minute, can we do that? Sure, but that might push something out of this. That's going to be later. So it helps us not only be internally organized, but to your point, have that external organization too. So I mean, it's a game changer for sure. Question here is basically, so do we ever go off script of this? Do we have to stick to it?
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll ad lib all the time. There's SEO is just so interesting to me where there's changes happening all the time and they might be real and they might be fake, who knows? There's so much, I'm not on Twitter or X or whatever we call it these days, but there's so much news around it. And with the changes, you have to change your strategy.
I don't want to make Tommy's head too big, but I love the content plan. I think it's a great idea. Maybe I would have it as something else, defined as something else, but I think just having a sheet, having a document that plans out or says, we're going to be writing about this, or this is the objectives, the goals that we're trying to achieve with said SEO or content plan, it just makes everybody, again, align around. And I think there's transparency into then what are we working on? And again, as SocialSurge, an agency, a lot of these takeaways are going to be transparency is important so people can bring ideas that are on point or aligned with the editorial calendar versus, hey, just had an idea for X client. That's not related at all. Thank you, though. So I think while it's super related to agencies, SocialSurge, that's a tough word to say. I don't know. Say it 4 times and see if you're still judging me. Anyways, I think that it's so important is in agencies, but it's so important in companies because a lot of times people have ideas, whether they're not super active with their ideas, but regardless, people have ideas or they will suggest things to marketing. And without a plan, it's me versus you versus our plan, which then means unless you're the boss or you have a lot of money, it's going to be hard to just uproot what we're doing if we have it written down. So I think that's super critical for both transparency and then obviously the second, accountability. Hey, we said we were going to do this. What's going on if it's not done? I know you, though, would do it because you're the best marketer out there. I also think another piece of it is focus. It allows you to align on focus. Now, that could have been some of my comments already. I think too many times people struggle with what are we even creating content about? And when you have a plan, you can tie certain blogs, certain things to audience segments. You can just get so much more intentional and focused. Next, you're going to hear me, not the best, sorry. You're going to hear me ask a question about SGI, which is Search Generalized Generative Intelligence, which is when you search on Google, it'll give you an answer. That is SGI, and it's replacing a lot of answers in Google that go to websites because you can just get it quicker by Gemini or another AI.
Tommy, how do you see
SGI or search generative intelligence playing into that with the information with it, especially just one-on-one. It's like, what is SEO? I'm not going to read a blog, I'll ask Claude, I'll ask Perplexity that question. How do you keep that in the plan now? Because I don't want to say it's a future, but it's clearly some plan how people get their information today.
The question was, how do we think about SGI with a lot of the content we're writing as well? Summarized, yes? Yes.
I think it's something I'm still exploring, to be completely honest.
I just saw something recently about how little or how much of a change there's been in total clicks going directly to websites since Google specifically has released their more of a AI generated answers, SGI, kind of that whole take on things. And I think it's hurting some aspects of it for sure, but it's definitely a big point to remember how content is written. And does every single piece of content have to follow that to make sure it's trying to rank for that? No. But it also really makes you the thing you brought up a perfect example of if you're trying to learn something at a one-on-one level or trying to learn what SEO is, you're not going to find that on a summarized version of it. And I hope you're not. If you're trying to learn more about it and want to get a better knowledge of it or have a better understanding of it, you're going to be spending time. And I think that's a big thing that we think about too is the length of content we're putting out is a big play in that too, or how technical we're talking about things. And we always try to make things seem very, as easy to understand as possible, but there's a lot of different aspects that go into that, and there's a lot of testing, to Tommy's point here, and a lot of things that we're still trying to figure out there. And Google is Google's even changing up how a lot of that stuff is shown right now too. It is going to for a while, I think.
I think it depends on the industry a ton. If I'm buying a pair of shoes, whatever my question was, I'm fine reading that little blurb that Google gives me, and I can make that purchase for $60. I mean, a lot of the clients that we work with, it's not small transactions that you're making. So that, I almost see that as 101 content. So they might get their answer of I don't know, how does financing work, or how do I get more financing? And they can get, a quick answer about that. But if they're really looking to make a business decision, they're gonna have to look into more content. And in my opinion, AI content or small blurbs for stuff that you really need to learn about is just not gonna be the answer ever, I don't think. I mean, this might not come to a shock to a few, but I think AI is such a hot topic now, crypto was, NFTs were, all of this stuff. I think this is my prediction, in 10 years, we're gonna be so much more human focused. It is still gonna be I would rather read this piece by this person, look at this painting by that person, whatever it is. So my belief is yes, it's a player, but I personally don't think about it too much. It's simple blurbs, it's maybe more cheap purchases, but from or at least the industries that we're in, it's not something I focus on too much.
How can you ensure it's not like the web before the web where people said nobody would buy anything online?
Totally.
That nobody would put their credit card information into this box that will just transmit things. But I get your point to I'm not going to hire my therapist by just asking AI. They'll have to listen to your podcast and I'm okay, this person's cool. But so I get that point. But even with TikTok becoming a search engine for how to, my wife became a celebrity baker purely through TikTok. It's no blogs were right there. It's just pure videos of people talking about it. And if you were a company who sold bread, that would be a place to be. Versus a blog of how to make sourdough.
Yeah, so to summarize that, I think the biggest summary there is just how do we ensure that that how you how you wrap that up is how do we ensure that by not thinking about it that it's going to be the best thing to happen to a company essentially,
I have no clue. I could be on the wrong end of this easily. My big thing though is trust, right? Again, if it is a massive player in 10 years, I don't care if I'm buying, if my company is buying something for 100,000, whatever, a big number is for that company, I want a human perspective. I don't want to, and that could be a phone call, but I would rather read something that they wrote or a page on their website, whatever it is, when I'm making that big decision. So yeah, I could easily be 100% wrong and in 10 years, maybe I'm out of a job, who knows? But like, it just depends on the industries you're working in, the size, what's the transaction, is it big, small, medium, whatever, is kind of my belief. But
first, I appreciate them even fielding this question. It was kind of a tough one, even if I had to answer it myself, which is why I host a podcast where I get to ask questions. Not this episode, though. One thing that I do disagree with or just want to dig deeper on is when Eric was talking about SEO, understanding it, I agree with him. I think anything to actually understand it, you need to read books, you need to read a lot of content. But if you don't know what SEO stands for or what it is, you're going to search online and you're going to take whatever it gives you and you're going to go because that's frictionless. So all the companies who are doing 101 type blog post, what is HR? What is the SGI is going to take that content. You're not going to get anybody on your website. And you could be listening to this and you could be really good at SEO. You could be a smart marketer and you're like, Jordan, those tactics are 5-10 years ago. And I can't argue with you. Yes, those are old. Marcus Sheridan wrote a book, They Ask You Answer. I think it was like 2012, 2014. So this has been around for a while, answering very simple questions. We have to factor in that AI, SGI will do it better than we will, quicker, faster, because they're just going to open Perplexity. They're just going to open something to quickly search, which then touches on how do you get into that content that is deeper. So if I just want to learn SEO through talking with Perplexity or ChatGPT, how do I make sure my content comes up? One of those things that I've heard from Andy Crestodina, sorry if I blew it, is creating unique content in the sense that you talk to 1,000 marketers in the state of Wyoming on X. So then when you ask what's current trends in marketing in Wyoming, that would be, nobody would ask that question, but then maybe it would pull from yours. So then if I want to go deeper, as Eric suggests, and I agree with, you're going to have to, you go to their website. So you don't need to create content that maybe is fed into the SGI in the sense of it's their answer. However, I don't even know the technicalness to it. I think it's changing of what is the stuff we're sharing. We're going to share more life events, stories, things that AI can't grab, but maybe if somebody wants to go deeper on X or Y, it's going to grab it. So it's like changing from very basic, simple content that AI, SGI could answer to telling stories using unique research. Next, Tommy and Eric touch on something that I've kind of understood, but I never had the perfect dichotomy that they place it of having technical and content. So thinking of SEO in two buckets, technical and content. I love it. Listen and hear for yourself.
All right, to make sure this isn't 2.5 hours, let's continue on.
yeah, geez, what are we at?
Technical versus content. Really, we're just gonna kind of like break down the two, but like what is the difference here? Are we prioritizing technical SEO versus content SEO? And I think just to give like a quick summary here, when I'm thinking about the two, like I'm thinking about technical SEO from a lot of like the baggage to clean up to make sure that what you're actually gonna do from a content perspective can perform well. Like you could have the best content written in the world, but if Google's not even able to crawl your website, it's never gonna be found and no one's ever gonna be able to read it. So that's kind of like from the technical piece, and then the content piece is performing content, very human first driven or people first type content. But yeah, I mean, from a technical side, like what are we doing there?
I mean, we're fixing, it goes back to onboarding. I think I just want to hit on one thing before we get to that is like, that's the reason we have SEO quick wins. So when we're onboarding a client, like these are the quick wins that we can do. A lot of that is technical, whether it's, fixing 404s. I don't know if you count meta titles and descriptions as technical. Just, from a website perspective, is it operating well? Because then from there, like the long-term strategy is probably much more content focused. So I think it's important, again, like you said, like the foundation is done quick, like we can do that quicker. I mean, we're doing fixing 404s, making sure linking is good, images are actually populating.
I love how Tommy breaks it down here that in that onboarding, you're getting some of these quick small wins, which are usually in the technical realm, whether it's updating metadata as he's talking about. That I think is important in so many realms, whether it's a podcast or something you're launching or doing, trying to find those small wins, those small signals that you can share with people to say, hey, something's working here, we're doing something productive, quote unquote. So I enjoyed that piece, and I love that too, that usually it's technical early on because once you get that foundation, you just keep using that versus content is kind of the long game. So I thought that was very helpful in thinking about both technical and content SEO.
The thing that I continue to think more and more about is just that it's easy to crawl Like, I think the content piece is a lot more human first, but from this side, like again, if a website, if it's hard for a Google bot to crawl a website, if it gets stuck somewhere every single time and it doesn't even like find a lot of pages, that's a huge problem. There's like a specific limit to how many pages, a crawl limit that'll happen each time that happens.
Load speed is a big one that we look at, image sizing, all of that fun stuff. That's like one of the biggest things that I always have a frustration with. If I click on a website and it takes more than 5 seconds to load, I'm out of there. Like I'm going in there. They might have the best information, but I'm gone. So that's like one main one that I always look at is load speed and are things operating quickly, and if they aren't, then what's the cause of that, and then that's what we're fixing.
Yeah, and like to make sure we don't get roasted here too, like technically is that SEO? Like no, like Google's gone out and said like specifically that load speed does not impact SEO, but it does impact someone staying on your site. So it's like, what is it actually SEO?
That's why I don't agree with Google on a lot of things. But
I love hanging around people who know way more about this stuff than me. I'm not an SEO expert, so I love how Eric touches on this kind of contradiction that even though site speed doesn't affect your ranking, at least per Google, it's still important for the user experience, which wouldn't be SEO, that would be web design. If your head isn't hurting as much as mine, you're far smarter than me, so keep going.
Cool. So I mean, it's a lot of that stuff, so no more backend, but content SEO. What do we do here?
I think we've kind of hit on this. Maybe we can run through it quickly. We're doing blogs, pages, resources, guides, downloadables, whatever the case may be. It is definitely like industry and client specific. So sometimes we'll get a client. We had a client on board recently where their pages had maybe like a paragraph and that was it. It's like, beautiful, we are doing page edits immediately. Like you need more copy, you need direction to send people like where they should go next.
And like not only do you need copy, but do you need like information?
Yeah.
Like someone can get to this page, they don't even know what you do.
Yeah.
Or like how you do it or anything.
Yeah, I think we all know like what different types of content there is. It's just pinpointing like where are they lacking. Sometimes it's having too much. This was the one piece I wanted to hit on. Blog rewrites have been the best thing we have ever done probably for the past like 2 years.
Kids, listen close here. I've heard this, seen this, watched case studies that show that reworking, rewriting, re-updating blogs is one of the best SEO strategies. Blows my mind, doesn't make much sense, but just listen more to what Tommy has to share.
So when we have a blog go out, whether it's Summer Movies 2022, we have rewritten this blog over and over and over, and it continually performs extremely well. And I think that's like one area of content that a lot of people maybe just don't look at. It's like, hey, we'll just write a new one or something on a different, like a similar topic, or we'll just rewrite it but not use the same URL. It's like that is the thing from a content of like SEO content side is been like game changing for us, is just being able to rewrite.
Again, that's why I'm not the smartest person in many rooms I go into. Such a great insight in such a way to end this podcast. SEO is not dead. If anything, it's only going to be more imperative and important in the future of how to understand it in a world of AI. But again, as Tommy opened this podcast, that's a premise that you have to believe. I believe that premise. You don't need to. But if you believe the premise that AI is like the internet and will fundamentally change how marketers do marketing, then you need to believe and jump into all of this because it's only going to get more important and harder to hack. If you listen to my recent episode that we just had last week, Mitch talks about this. Hacks don't work. SEO could have been something that was easily hacked in the past. I think they even had like black hat SEO, but now you can't do that as much, which only means that you need to be more intentional, have more information to make an informed approach strategy for SEO and include it within your larger marketing strategy. So then it builds up, ladders up to your organization's objectives and strategic goals. I hope you enjoyed this unique episode. If anybody's having an event in marketing and wants me to come record it, well, I didn't record it. Shout out to the SocialSurge team for recording it, and then talk over it, give some commentary. It kind of gives your event a little bit of a boost. More people get to hear about you, see you, than that attended. And it also allows me to just go deeper and have a lot of fun, because I thought this was unique. Rather than me sitting behind the question asker table, I got to listen to people and then come back, talk about it, go deeper. And then hopefully in the future, I can reconnect with both Tommy and Eric, and they can prove why some of the things I told you today are wrong or just slightly incorrect, and they'll give me the more scientific, smart answer. Thank you for making it this far, because few do. So, to repay you for the time you spent listening to me, my guest, I have an offer, I have a deal for you. If you click the first line in the show notes and sign up for just let me know whether LinkedIn DMs or email jordano@hey.com, I will give you 60 minutes of free marketing help, whether that be guidance on your messaging, positioning, or your content strategy, or even helping you write a landing page for a new product or service you have coming. Sign up for it. Let me know you did. In 60 minutes, I am all yours. That sounded a lot better when I wrote it, but anyways, you get the gist. I really appreciate you being on this journey with me to uncover what truly is marketing and how do we apply it today. I hope to see you back here next week for a new episode, and stay thinking differently.